Lists and for loops. In this video, we will learn how for loops can be used to process lists. In the previous unit, we learned a special for-in approach for processing each individual character in a string. What made this approach special was the fact that it relieved us of having to use the range and the len method, thus making our code cleaner and easier to read. Fortunately, Python also allows us to use this approach with lists. This process can be used for processing each individual value in the list, once again without having to use either the range or the len methods. That all being said, suppose our interest is not just in the value. Suppose we want to print out both the index and the value. Well, in that case, this approach won't be enough. We would need to bring back both the len method and the range method so that we can get the indexes. With the indexes, we can then print out both the index and the values stored at the corresponding index. Notice that we converted I to a string using the str method because we cannot concatenate an integer with a string unless we convert it to a string first. After running this code, this would be our output. That all being said, because working with both the index and the value in the list is a very common task in computer science, Python also provides a special approach for working with both of those values, similar to how it provided a special approach for working with just the value. And this approach starts with the enumerate method. What the enumerate method will do is create two lists. The first list will be a list of indexes, the numbers. Then the second list will be a list of the values corresponding to those indexes. Then, during each iteration, the index will get stored in the first variable, in this case I, and the value at that index will get stored in the second variable. So, in other words, during the first iteration, 0 will get stored in I, and Tom will get stored in name. Then in the second iteration, 1 will get stored in I, and Jerry will get stored in name, so on and so forth. So, now that we have those two variables, we can now use them inside our for loop. Once again, we use the str method to convert I to a string so that we can concatenate it. Then, on the other end, you see us using the name variable that'll store the value that is located at that index, thus giving us this as our output. This enumerate approach can also be used on strings. In this example, each index gets stored in the variable I, and each individual character gets stored in the variable letter.